when we fail to recognize God as our provider. Understanding the root of the problem. At its core, sin is not just about doing wrong things, it's about a heart that turns away from God. When we forget that everything we have comes from Him, we start depending on ourselves. This is dangerous because pride creeps in. We think, I worked hard for this, so I deserve it, instead of remembering that God gave us the ability to work. Deuteronomy 8:17-18. Fear takes over. We worry about the future, forgetting that God has promised to take care of us. Matthew 6:31-34. Disobedience follows. When we rely on ourselves, we may make decisions without seeking God's will, leading us away from Him. This is exactly what happened in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were tempted to believe that they could become like God and decide for themselves what was best. Genesis 3:1-6. The enemy used deception to make them doubt God's goodness and provision. The same thing happens to us today when we think we can handle life on our own. The enemy's strategy. Satan is subtle. He doesn't always tempt us with obvious sin. Instead, he attacks our thinking. You don't need to pray about this. You know what to do. If you don't take control, who will? You can't just wait for God. God hasn't answered your prayer yet. Maybe you need to take matters into your own hands. These thoughts might seem harmless, but they pull us away from trusting God. Before we know it, we start making decisions without Him, and sin follows. God's role as our provider. James 1:17 reminds us that every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father. This means our talents and skills, God gave them to us. Our job and income, God provides them. Our health and strength, they come from Him. Even the opportunities and people in our lives, all from God. When we recognize this, we stop depending on ourselves and start trusting Him more. God's mercy, He rescues us even when we fail. Ephesians 2:4-5 tells us that even when we turn away, God is rich in mercy. He doesn't abandon us when we fall into pride or self-sufficiency. Instead, He calls us back, reminding us that He is all we need. Like the prodigal son in Luke 15, we may sometimes try to live life on our own terms, but the moment we turn back, God is there, ready to embrace us.
Practical ways to trust in God's provision and grace. Here's how we can rely on God more each day. Start with prayer. Before making decisions, pray and ask for God's guidance. Remember His past faithfulness. Look back on times when God provided and trust He will do it again. Obey His word. Even when it's hard, trust that God's ways are best. Let go of worry. Instead of stressing, surrender your needs to God. Philippians 4:6-7. Be grateful. Thank God daily for what you have, big or small. Gratitude keeps our hearts dependent on Him. Reflection. Questions. In what areas of your life do you find it hard to trust God? Are there ways in which self-reliance has led you away from Him? How can you take a step today to rely more on God's provision? Would you like to discuss a specific struggle where trusting God is difficult? I'd love to walk through it with you. Like, share, and subscribe to be a blessing.